Divine geometry and sacred number 8 used by Alexander the Great everywhere. Is this and also evidence that the Amphipolis tomb is Alexander's final resting place? Alexander the Great, prophecies in the book of Daniel given to him by Archangel Gabriel. Alexander the Great, when he went to Solomon's temple in Jerusalem as he was beginning his conquests, was told of the prophecy given by Archangel Gabriel to the prophet Daniel. That was where he stopped before going to Egypt, where he was declared Pharaoh, the son of God. Well, maybe it's because the high priest there knew that his real biological father was Pharaoh Nectanebo, one of the last real pharaohic line of Egypt. But this is an amazing connection between the numbers used, the divine numbers, and number 8 used everywhere by Alexander the Great, by his architect Dinocrates, in his tomb in Amphipolis, which is twice as big as his father's tomb, King Philip's in Vergina, and also in the city of Alexandria, which was a city that he established in the area of Egypt towards the Mediterranean Sea. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. And even by his architect Dinocrates in the city of Ephesus, the temple of Artemis in Asia Minor. And recently, the evidence that yes, it could be the Amphipolis is the final resting place of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great could be buried in the Amphipolis tomb. Who fears that possibility? You realize a few years ago they found a beautiful tomb east of Salonika in northern Greece. They didn't find it recently, but it was re-excavated recently, and they found various crypts inside. They found into the entrance, there was a magnificent, very well kept tomb. They found chambers inside. They found sphinxes. They found what they thought originally were caryatids, but they were clothones, some kind of an ancient type of an Amazon woman. And they were using their beauty to entice their enemies. And they were basically warriors. And some people fear that this tomb could actually belong to Alexander the Great. I'm translating this from a Greek article on Vridrastika. So the dead king Alexander the Great, we know he lived about 330 BC, and he conquered all the known world east of Greece, and that was the end of the Persian Empire. So they say that the tomb was built for him. And that the tomb was his actual burial place is somewhere in this tomb. But they refuse to search for it. I have no psychosis with Alexander the Great, just as many elements of his behavior have occasionally been criticized. But just like Arian, I have forgotten him for one reason only. He did it because of his youthful impulse, which drove him into action, which he himself regretted. Have you thought about what all men did in our 19 to 25 years? Either we were studying, or we were in the army, or we were generally looking. He was king at 19, and at 25 he was the ruler of the then known world. Let's also remember that he was prophesied about in the book of Daniel. He was the little horn that would do away with the big horn, meaning, of course, the king of Persia. Now, that prophecy was given to the prophet Daniel by Archangel Gabriel. Now, going back to this article, as a researcher who has deepened the mysteries of the world, I've learned to filter information and can figure out if someone is telling the truth or not. I look closely at the Amphipolis strokes and have come to a single conclusion. They work for us normally. They think we are eating weed. In other words, they think we're animals that eat the grass, that we have no brains, let's put it that way. Having read the biography of the great soldier from various sources, he was always concerned with the mystery concerning his tomb. Oh, I have to also tell you, okay, he knew of the prophecy of the Old Testament from the book of Daniel. How did he know for sure? Because when he conquered the East, the Near East, he went to the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. We're talking about 330 BC. Okay? That was before the Maccabees. The Maccabees were about 150, 160 BC. So he went to the Temple of Solomon, and the high priests told him of in Jerusalem, they told him of the prophecy of the prophet Daniel concerning him. So he knew about that prophecy, that he would die early, that his kingdom would only last 10 years, and the heirs to his kingdom would not be his heirs, but his kingdom would be separated to 4 generals, and that's exactly what happened. And so after Jerusalem, he went to Egypt, and he went to, there were a lot of Greeks there already in Egypt. And he went there. He also established the city of Alexandria in Egypt. But he asked the high priest there if he was a god. And they said, yes, you are the son of a god. Therefore you are a god. And why did they tell him that? It's because the high priests knew that his real biological father was Pharaoh Nectanebo, one of the last pharaohs of the real pharaonic line of Egypt. But because of the fact that his life was in danger, he fled Egypt and went to Salonika. He went to the palace of King Philip, Alexander's father, before Alexander was born. But Philip was away on a campaign somewhere, and the wife, Alexander's mother, Olympias, was there. And Pharaoh Nectanebo pretended he was a magician from Egypt, from the Far East, from Egypt actually, and he was with her almost every day, and he supposedly used his knowledge of hallucinogenics, and came in to her, and he fathered Alexander the Great. The high priest knew of this, and that's why they called Alexander the Great a god, because they knew he was a biological son of the pharaoh Nectanebo, and therefore, because the pharaoh of Egypt was considered to be a god, quote unquote, that's why they called him a god. And when Philip, Alexander's father, returned to Salonika, Thessaloniki of northern Greece, and found his wife pregnant, even though he had not been with her to conceive that child, he was always claiming that that child was not his son. And in fact, when he divorced Alexander's mother, Olympias, married a younger woman, he did not want to give his kingdom, the heirship, to Alexander, because he considered him not of his offspring. So that's just fact, that's history. But then something happened, Philip lost his life, and then Alexander did take the kingdom. But okay, so Alexander knew of the prophecy of the prophet Daniel. So he did prepare for his tomb, okay? Now, Amphipolis, what's so special about Amphipolis? The Amphipolis is where Alexander the Great had his navy. It's a beautiful little area with a bay, just east of Salonika, not far from Salonika. And it has a wonderful bay. And that's where he had his navy, and he used that navy to go towards the east. Some of the ships they even carried over land, supposedly. Now, okay, so going on with the article, having read the biography of the great soldier, meaning Alexander the Great, from various sources, he was always concerned with the mystery with his tomb. Was it in Babylon, in Alexandria of Egypt? Was it in the Siva Desert, or somewhere in Macedonia? Anyway, I look at the case of Amphipolis, my logic leads me to conclude that the tomb of Alexander the Great is in Amphipolis. I saw K. Velopoulos by chance on November 26, 2014, on his show on Greek television, and he had been talking about Amphipolis all the time, about incredible theories, but I admit he's the only one who publicly unleashed the archaeologists in the Greek Ministry of Culture for a terrible cover-up, especially this fairy tale skeleton with the greatest villain of all time, that is the greatest villain of all time, and he does not digest anything with his brothers. The pen, the poor, the anonymous, the master of nothing, is buried in the tomb twice as large as Vergina's great tomb of King Philip. Okay, the tomb of King Philip was found in Vergina, which is sort of south of Salonika. And the findings, the artifacts from the tomb of King Philip, are in the Thessalonica Ancient History Museum. And I have seen that collection. In fact, one of his legs, he had shin guards, and one of his legs was shorter than the other because of a terrible battle and fight he had. So that's why one shin guard was smaller than the other, because he was like limping because one leg was shorter than the other because of a battle. So the Amphipolis tomb is almost twice as big as the King Philip's tomb. And that's why this man here thinks that the Amphipolis tomb could have very well been the tomb of Alexander the Great. So the tomb twice as large as Vergina's great tomb that was for King Philip. Now, in order not to feel alone, they made him a 15-foot long marble lion, 2 sphinxes, 2 caryatids. They were not caryatids, they were clovones, because the caryatids don't have their breasts are covered. The caryatids have their both breasts covered, whereas the clovones have one breast exposed. And they had a basket with snakes on top of their heads, the clovones. That's not what the caryatids had. They had a basket, but it wasn't, full of snakes. So that's why the women in Amphipolis were clovones. It's like the female warriors protecting the king type of thing. I don't know. That's what it seems like. So 15-foot marble lions, 2 sphinxes, 2 caryatids, and a mosaic of incredible beauty. Is that normal work for just anybody's tomb? And this person doesn't think so. So he says, so again, I would like to summarize his own very logical remarks in my question. 1, at the monument was found the rosette, that is the rose, the royal emblem, found in the golden shrine of Philip II of Vergina, unsolicited by Peristeri, Monedi, Tasula, and others. That's she was the woman that was in charge of the excavating of that, of the findings there in Amphipolis. So the royal emblem was found there, just as it was found in King Philip's Vergina tomb. So if the royal emblem is found in Amphipolis, that means a royal is buried there. Number 2, on the outline of the monument on the marble has been found by Dorothy King, as she pointed out, a relief of Alexander's monogram. Whereas the Greek archaeologists said they were symbols of the builder. That's not so. Dorothy King, who was an international archaeologist, says no, the relief, the monogram is Alexander's monogram, meaning that the monogram was that of Alexander the Great. So I, as an engineer, and all my colleagues, when we put marks on a project, we build or supervise, we spray, paint, nail, etc. We don't make them universal, like what the dinosaur did at first unrecognizable points. Not to mention the same monographs that, as some others say, and others found themselves in the grave and covered them with black and white. 3, the 15-year-old lion symbolizes not just a general, as they claim, but a king. And such was only Alexander the Great. Have you thought how much the sculptor was paid to make this huge lion? Who paid him? He worked for 2 years and 20,000 tons of marble. And that's what we're told. So was the royal lion made for a humble but honest, anonymous dead person that they buried in this tomb? In the 3rd burial chamber? No. So, this person says, number 1, they found the rosette, that is the royal emblem, found in the golden shrine of Philip II, Alexander's father, in the tomb of Vergina. Number 2, they found Alexander's monogram. And number 3, the huge marble lion of 20,000 tons of marble. Besides the fact that the tomb was twice as big as the tomb of King Philip. So that's why this person believes that the Amphipolis tomb must be that of Alexander the Great. They have not yet researched and excavated all the chambers that are in there. So he may be in there still. That's wonderful. That's wonderful news. I'll leave links below for you. For this, I've translated this from Greek into English. Sacred number of God in Egypt under Alexander the Great's period, connections to Amphipolis tomb in northern Greece, and what his architect used as sacred numbers in various construction during the period he was working under Alexander the Great. Hopefully you'll enjoy this because they are a little bit historic and recent findings. in continuation for the concerning the Amphipolis tomb, I think it's important that we dwell in the numerology of the value of the diameter of the Amphipolis tomb, the size of the Amphipolis lion statue, and how these values are connected with the building of the ancient city of Alexandria in Egypt, the city that was built for Alexander the Great. The architect of these three locations, these three projects, was a very famous architect from Rhodes called Dinokratos. The city of Alexandria the Great was built in 331 BC, and the Greek historian Plutarch wrote about that. Now we see that specifically the lion that was found on top of the Amphipolis tomb, in the center of the Amphipolis tomb, the size of the lion itself is 5.3 meters high. Together with the base that supported the statue, the height of the lion and the base was 15.84 meters high. So the number is 1584. Let's keep that in mind, 1584. So that's the height of the Amphipolis lion that stood on top of the Amphipolis tomb. The second matter that we go into is the perimeter of the, now let's go into the diameter of the Amphipolis tomb. The diameter is the cross section. If we cut it, if we measure it from one point to the opposite point of the circle of the tomb, it is 158.4 meters. 158.4 meters, the diameter of the Amphipolis tomb. And if we go to the city of Alexandria of Egypt, the city of Alexandria of Egypt has a perimeter of 18.84 kilometers. So going all around the circumference, the perimeter of the ancient city of Alexandria of Egypt, not as it is today, but as it was then when it was built, is 18.84 kilometers. There's this number 1584. Now, when I went to research on the various projects that the architect of Alexander the Great, Dinokratos, was involved in, I found, and I will leave links below for you for these items that we're talking about now. He used, there was one city that he did, one project that he did with, that was 1,260 meters from the city of Alexandria, Egypt. That was 7 stadiums. So his stadium, the stadium for Dinokratos, was 180 meters. This was a little bit different from the stadium length used at that time, which was about 185 meters, a little bit less than 185. The ancient stadium meters used at that time had to do with the circumference of the earth. They were working in the fragments of 60s, like 1/60th of 1/60th of 1/60th of the circumference of the earth was a stadium. But he used the number 180 meters, not 184 meters, 185 meters. So the stadium length that Dinokratos, the architect of Alexander the Great, used was 180 meters. Okay? So if we divide the number 15840 by 180 meters, we get 88 stadiums. So that's exactly 88, the number 88. Let's remember, though, that in those ancient times, let's remember that Alexander the Great, many times before his battles or an endeavor of conquest or something, some significant aspect of his career, Alexander the Great would always offer sacrifice to the gods. And before doing this, he would take a bath, a ritual religious bath to cleanse himself. So he was a very faithful man. He kept his link to the gods very clean and very strong. It was a very important matter to him that he had the help of the gods on his side before endeavoring anything new. So it's significant that we see the number 88 or the number 8. The number 8 used in the building and the projects by the architect of Alexander the Great. Now, the number 88 is significant because it has a special meaning in that for example, in the Holy Bible, which was the Old Testament at that time, the number 88 represents, and I will leave a link below, it represents a new beginning, meaning a new order or creation. And I quote this: a man's true born-again event when he's resurrected from the dead into eternal life. It's very interesting. Boys were circumcised on the 8th day. The number 8 symbolized circumcision of the heart through Christ and the receiving of the Holy Spirit, Romans 28:29. After the 7 weeks of the spring harvest, the next day, the 50th day, is Pentecost. This day is also the 8th day of the 7th week. The number 8 New Testament was penned by only eight men: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, Peter, Jude, and Paul. The most joyous feast period of the year is the 8th day period of the fall feast of tabernacles, followed immediately after by the last great day. Abraham, the father of all the faithful, had 8 sons in total. They were Ishmael, Isaac, Zimram, Joksham, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shuha. Let's go. We had night watchers and day watchers: first watch, second watch, third watch, fourth watch of the night, and the day watchers: first, second, third, and fourth watch. The day watch was split into 8 sections of 3 hours each. And 8. How is the number 8 related to Jesus' resurrection? Jesus showed himself alive 8 times after his resurrection from the dead. His first appearance alive was to Mary Magdalene. Then he shows himself to the 2 traveling disciples to Emmaus, St. Luke and St. Cleopas. Next, he appeared to the disciples. A week later, when Thomas was present. According to Apostle Paul, Christ also was seen by 500 believers at one time. Jesus also met his disciples at the appointed place in Galilee and on Galilee's shores. And his final meeting was on the Mount of Olives, where he gave his followers instructions before his ascension to heaven. And additional information of the biblical meaning of 8. God saved 8 people on the ark in order to have a new beginning for mankind after the flood, since the meaning of 4 is derived from God's creation of everything. 8 is 4 plus 4. Pictures a new creation after the flood. 8 is the number of Jesus, whose name in Greek adds up to 888. So here we have a very interesting, significant number hiding the number 8. The number 15840 divided by 180 meter stadium, the Vinocratus stadium measurement, is 88 for the city of Alexandria, and it's also 8.8 for the diameter of the Amphipolis tomb. I wonder if this points to the fact that the tomb may actually have a very strong connection to Alexander the Great himself. I'll leave links below for you so you can see this. Concerning the Amphipolis tomb, we are aware that at the septal wall separating the chambers, there were small holes found at the top near the roof of each separation wall. This was due to the fact that during the First World War, when in northern Greece the British Army was stationed, there were amateur archaeologists who found the tomb and entered into it and tried to invade it and plunder it. They did find certain items of ancient value, usually ancient, most of them were ancient gold and silver items having to do with jewelry and death masks. Here they're holding skeletons, craniums of ancient Greeks found in the area, in the tombs of the area. These are British soldiers of 1914. That is when the lion of the Amphipolis tomb was found. This lion is a 5.3 meter height marble statue. It was positioned in the center of the top of the tomb of Amphipolis. The lion symbolized royalty. They tried to take it down into pieces, cut it into pieces, and ship it to Britain, to England, but they were stopped by the Bulgarians and others of the First World War fighting in the area. So this was found on top of the Amphipolis tomb, right in the center on the top. So here is a reminder of one of the septal walls. We see here on the left-hand side a hole that was made. It was most probably made by the British Army amateur archaeologists who tried to see if they could plunder this tomb. It was impossible for them to do so because the chambers were filled with soil. And these were the items taken and by these amateur British archaeologists to the British Museum. This is photo credit to the trustees of the British Museum. And here we see one of the English amateur archaeologists entering the tomb of Amphipolis. As we said, they were the ones who made the small holes in the septal walls which divided the chambers. We have now, today is the 14th of October 2014, and we were told by the archaeologists at the site that there is a fourth chamber which has stairs leading down towards its left-hand side. This is, again, this chamber has a smaller opening, about 15 centimeters, slit. Obviously, these amateur British archaeologists saw that it was not possible for them to plunder the tomb, so they just left it. They were stopped by the war of that was going on in that area at that time. So they were the ones who made the little holes in each septal wall. The architect of the Amphipolis tomb is said to be the architect of Alexander the Great, and that was Dinocratus. He was also the architect of the city of Alexandria, Egypt. He was also the architect of the funeral pyre of Hephaestionus. I will leave a link below. This is a very old picture of what the rendering. The Dinocratus wanted to make a statue out of the mountain of Mount Athos in Halkidiki, in the peninsula of Halkidiki in northern Greece. That mountain is 2,000 meters high. And he wanted to carve out a statue of Alexander the Great sitting at it, with one hand holding a city and the other hand having a river flowing from over his hand and nourishing the land of the area, giving life and water pure water to the area. So this is a rendering. That actually never happened. Mount Athos is now a community of monasteries from the Byzantine era until now. This is what it would have looked like. It would have been a carving, a massive carving of the figure of Alexander the Great. And this is a picture, a drawing of a rendering of the funeral pyre of Hephaestionus. And this is a depiction described on a description, based on the description by Diodorus. This is a painting of the late 19th century depicting the funeral pyre of Hephaestionus, one of Alexander the Great's very beloved friends, and they were very dear friends from their early childhood. Dinocratus was also the architect of the Temple of Artemis, or the Temple of Diana in Ephesus. We know the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus because it was where a lot of the early disciples of Christ had gone to preach and to convert a lot of pagans to Christianity. So this was, again, one of the major architectural works of Dinocratus, Alexander the Great's architect. Now, there's something very strange about the Amphipolis tomb in that I found that, maybe someone else can help us out, but we found that there's a link between the Amphipolis lion that we showed before, the diameter of the Amphipolis tomb, which is 158.4 meters diameter, plus the city of Alexandria in Egypt, which is 15.840 meters in 1/100th of a scale. This was Egypt's main port of import and exports. 80% of the items imported and exported into Egypt. And it was mainly a Greek city with Greek people from various backgrounds. It was also home to the largest urban Jewish community in the ancient world. So this lion of 15.84 meters, the diameter of the Amphipolis tomb of 158.40 meters, plus the 15.840 meters in 1/100th scale of the city of Alexandria in Egypt. What does this 1584 stand for? What is this number 1584? If anyone knows, please let us know about it. What is this? What meaning does this have? Obviously, it has to do with Alexander the Great. The tomb of Amphipolis, Alexandria, the city of Alexandria in Egypt, plus the lion, and the number 1584. If anyone knows, please let us know. This is the beautiful surrounding wall of the tomb of Amphipolis. You see it's in excellent condition, excellent craftsmanship of marble surrounding the tomb. Excellent craftsmanship. This is from the Hellenic Minister of Culture, Greek Ministry of Archaeology and Culture. Again, these are the sphinxes that were found in the first septal wall. The two headless sphinxes. Their heads were not found. Their wings were not found. The two headless sphinxes. And you see that there are carved feathers on the top part of the body of each sphinx. The bottom part is a lion, and the fingernails are very sharp. And you see that the top part of the body of the Sphinx is carved with feathers, which would have extended out towards its wings. And the wings and the head, the heads have not been found. I don't even know if there would have been enough room for the heads to be there. Again, this is another picture, close-up of the Sphinx of the Amphipolis tomb, found at the outside of the first chamber, and you can see the details of the wings above the forearms of the forelegs of the Sphinx. And these pictures of the Amphipolis tomb are courtesy of the site of the Hellenic Ministry of Culture, the archaeology department. And I'll leave links for you to see them on your own. Very interesting. Beautiful work.